Our top story tonight, some going down in November.
Wars, spending.
There has got to be something big a-brewing.
They're using geese to guard prisons in Brazil.
Does Biden know what
Immigration
Mexico
policies.
is? Would you scare Joe Biden? What are we laughing at?
I think Billy Mays was real.
I'm a world-class skeptic.
I don't know anything about Hunter Biden. I don't know who's big into cocaine and laptops. Why is that our problem?
Complete, absolute incompetence. Like, who funds the news? It's a freaking inside job, man. That the entire world's a stage and everything's fake.
Excellent. All right, cool.
You didn't say one, so you kind of...
No, he appropriately counted down. Welcome back to another episode of the Veritas Road. Carson, back here with Murph. Our top story tonight, internationally renowned painter Kenneth Longtits is set to begin showcasing his most recent studio exhibition later this month. The artist's controversial collection features scenes of an exuberant tiger covering up his waist in a litter box while apparently engrossed in a rousing game of hide-and-go-seek with several other woodland creatures. Tickets are disappearing fast, so be sure to phone your local gallery today to get a glimpse of this modern masterpiece, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Pooh.
That was by far the weirdest one you've had yet. I don't even know how to respond to that. What do you...
I got nothing.
It was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Pooh. I f***ed it up.
Oh. Oh, that would have made a lot more sense.
That was...
Man, it would have made a lot more sense.
Yeah.
That would have brought Winnie the Pooh in.
Yeah, that was the whole point.
I
That was what made it funny.
I thought you were talking
It was
about
Crouching
like,
Tiger, Hidden Pooh. I wrote a one before it that was about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Nuts, and then I changed it to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Pooh, and then I f***ed it up.
Dude, I thought you were talking about like taking a dump and some kind of weird tiger situation with that.
Or we're going down some furries lane with this.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
referencing the cabin that you were in church camp the one time you went.
That was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Butts.
I
yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, none of that. I just can't read. I wrote Tigger. I wrote it out and couldn't read it. So that's unfortunate. Let's talk about the other shit on the news, because that was a train wreck. All right. What?
Only in deliveries. The writing was still good.
The writing was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
It was aggressively long.
It was. I tried to make it shorter earlier, but I had other stuff to do. So, John, pull up my article real quick. I'll lead off. I thought this was interesting. A man, I believe it was in Thailand or some Asian country, if we can get John to get to the screen here. He got a divorce because his wife was making him pay for sex.
Wait, what?
Scroll up to the title, John. Too fat husband granted divorce after wife demands fee for incompetent sex. He got fat and apparently unpleasant, and his wife made him pay. I think it was like $15 for sex, or for just like having conversations with him, or for cooking meals. She started making him pay because apparently, as she told the courts, the sex was incompetent and he got fat. And so, yeah, she started making him pay for sex.
And the court sided with him?
The court sided with him. Yeah, he was pissed that his wife was making him pay for sex. So he filed for divorce once, and they ended up denying it or dismissing it because she said she was going to work on her marriage. And then I guess she didn't, and it happened again. So he filed for divorce again, and then was granted it because they didn't. I don't think they had spoken for like 2 years.
I'm just going to chalk that up to
Wow.
Asian culture. I don't understand any
What
of
do you mean,
I-
Asian culture?
that. I don't have, that doesn't mean anything. That's me throwing it away because I don't understand it.
Okay,
But it's interesting.
fair enough. If you say so. All right. What do you have?
I don't know. I can't really top that. John, hey, pull up mine. So this is hilarious. This is on Drudge. Or it was on Drudge. I don't know if it's still there because, we release these in
What?
arrears. Yeah, so apparently there. You can read the headline here. John, go down to the actual picture. Trump was claiming, it's not that. There was another one. That one. Dude, Trump's claiming that's AI.
It looks like it's AI.
First of all, yeah, that was going to be my first point. It looks AI generated, right? If no one has any preconceived bias, it doesn't look real. Second of all, who in the world, who is actually out there cheering for Kamala? Who would actually be doing that?
No, nobody likes her.
Yeah.
None of the Democrats like her. everyone else hates her. So I don't.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
There were probably 4 people at that rally.
Yeah, nobody voted for. That's not even a rally. That looks like she's landing on some kind of giant plane, like a Air Force Two.
There were is that a thing?
I don't know.
Yes, that's.
Is it
what-
really?
Is it actually what it's called? Air
Yes,
Force
that's
2?
the vice president's
Oh.
plane.
Look at me. Look at me. I knew
Great
that
job.
without even knowing that.
There were probably 4 people and like a non-binary furry at that rally.
Yeah, but they're making it look like freaking like JFK. You know, look at
Yeah.
You know, look at it. And hey, John, that's a good
what I'm
point.
saying.
RFK.
Like, what is that guy taking a picture of?
Tatooine. It looks like
you
effing
see that tan
Tatooine.
in
He's
there?
watching Star Wars.
Oh, that's a good point. Wow.
Like, what is that?
So
That is
Trump's got to
okay.
be right here, right? They're saying it's misinformation, but he's absolutely spot on. It's AI.
We got taken down for misinformation last week.
That's right on TikTok. Who would have thought?
Yeah, right. We would
Um,
never do such a thing.
So, John, I wanted to
Oh, jeez.
I wanted to show you a picture. Go to that picture.
You're showing us a picture?
Yeah. So I spent about 5 minutes on an AI software, and I came up with pretty much the same thing.
Dude.
All right. So just imagine the Democratic National Convention or the Democratic Party with freaking $200 million a second. If I can do that in 5 minutes on an AI generator,
What can they do?
what can they do?
Yeah. And you
So-
did this for free.
That's right.
I've used this software. I introduced you to this software.
Yeah. So what a joke, man.
That's hilarious.
Nobody. I mean, that's fake news.
What?
Am I just blind, or does it look like there's a trail of people trying to board the backside of the plane?
It does, yeah.
Okay, it's
Ooh.
not just me?
The photo generator's weird.
Okay.
The photo generator's weird.
But it's the free version, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not the paid version, so it doesn't work as well.
That's fair.
It's super
I'm
fun to use, though.
sufficiently blind to have to ask to see if I'm seeing what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, it looks like some tiny African nations trying to get on the back of the plane.
Exactly. Like they're begging, take us with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
just-
wild.
Yeah, I just thought you'd find that interesting.
That does also sound like just some trash, like some shade Trump would throw at somebody just because he doesn't like the picture. He'd be like, it's fake news. It's AI. You know?
I mean, yeah, but
To play the other side of that.
then
game.
you'd have to deny that the picture looks that the picture doesn't look fake.
Right.
That's where you run into a problem.
Yeah.
Like if it was like a clearly real looking picture, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's onto something.
No, it looks like it. That looked aggressively fake. That's hilarious. That is genuinely hilarious. All right. So that's on the news for unless Amber, do you have any on the news?
I have no on the news.
Okay. So this week we have our first guest of this round of podcasts. Now that we've gotten slightly better equipment and been doing this again.
You just broke the continuity wall, but
What do you mean?
never mind. Just keep going.
Okay. Well, so the guest is my sister, and she her name's Amber, if you're curious, and she has degrees that I don't care about, but they're in
That's fair.
English. You have like a bachelor's in something, and then a master's in something to do with English, and then you're getting
Yes.
your doctorate in
Eventually.
something else to do with English.
Yes. That is a perfect
Tell me what that
synopsis
is.
of my educational background.
Yeah.
19th century British literature. I am focusing eventually my dissertation on novels of education, which usually gets the response of, wow, that's a thing?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
No one reads novels of education.
Actually, you probably have. Dickens technically counts. And Kipling.
I like Rudyard Kipling. I like Dickens.
See? Both of them are interested in educational issues and wrote for the purpose to inform, educate, or to kind of help reform educational practices of their day. Dickens in particular wrote specifically with the intent of social political reform in mind.
Okay. Fascinating.
He was very politically engaged.
I mean, okay.
So what was he trying to do? Like get Queen Victoria to notice his books?
Not his books, but to reform the abuses and injustices of society, to clean up literally some of the filth and stench that was plaguing London at the time. If you've read Nicholas Nickleby or Hard Times, or even
Oliver Twist.
Great Expectations, Oliver Twist actually as well. All of them are deeply concerned with educational themes, especially around how boys are taught at school. And Nicholas Nickleby in particular reveals some of the abuses that had recently been a scandal at one of the private boys' schools in, I forget actually which county, but yeah, it was something that was in the news, and he used it as inspiration to write a novel of basically bringing attention to that issue to try to help promote reform.
Yeah, because they would just like beat kids back then, right?
Yes.
That's why we have America, though. They beat their children. They came over here and they built the greatest country on earth. So I don't see why this is a problem.
He also came to America. He produced a book called American Notes, and one of the things that he did was he went to various educational and reformative institutions. He traveled widely. He was not a fan of America by the time he left. He found Americans remarkably uncouth and annoying.
Probably because we don't beat our kids enough. That's the problem.
That could be. He also found them incredibly invasive. They would not give him his privacy and just leave him alone while traveling. But he visited various schools and penitentiaries and political environs to see what this American democratic experiment was all about, and left disillusioned.
I mean, that's understandable.
He's got the invasive part right. We invade everything. We
Yeah.
see there's something there, let's invade it.
Apparently,
That's
celebrity
true.
culture, specifically in that aspect, has not changed
Yeah.
since Dickens. So
Well, I didn't know that, but I didn't
We're
know
doing
Charles
well.
Dickens. What was that? That was John, wasn't it?
Didn't do anything.
Oh, I'm just blaming you for an apparition that I
You're
heard.
distracted.
it's the ghost of Dickens.
Yeah.
Goes to Christmas past.
I was just going to say that I've read Great Expectations. That's the only Dickens that I've read.
Yeah, and
Miss Havisham was
it's-
so creepy.
It's dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay.
You didn't like Great Expectations?
I didn't know. I thought it was
Mm.
bad. And
Fair.
okay, the writing's good, but it's horrifically depressing.
It is remarkably depressing.
Yeah.
Many of his stories aren't especially cheerful until you get to the end.
Right.
Bleak House
Oh,
is
that one.
rather aptly named, by the by.
Yeah, it's a good name for a book. If you want to kill yourself.
Again, rather aptly named.
Yeah. Right. So, aside from Dickens, The Machine Stops, which we all
Yes.
read this week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I read it. I don't know if you people read it.
Yes.
You did. Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
You got any more context?
Well, so, no, I really don't. It's a dystopian book.
Well, I'll add
is.
some context. Okay. So it's written by E.M. Forster,
Yeah.
who was writing in the same time as Charles Dickens and in the same kind of what Amber's area of expertise is under, right?
He wasn't writing the same time as Charles Dickens.
Was he
Shortly thereafter. So
thought
he
Ian
was born
Forster was-
late Victorian era and is considered an Edwardian author
Hmm.
because he didn't really start publishing until after the Victorian era proper was over.
I was just guess if I was going to define his life into 1 year, I would say 1897. Is that correct, or is that
I always have to remember or check my notes. He was born 1879,
okay? I was off.
died
1970?
1970.
Dang. So,
knew that.
well, so he was a young guy. He was a young
Mhm.
guy during the Victorian era. then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, born tail end of it because the Victorian era proper ended in 1901.
Yeah, she died in 1902
Mhm.
or something, right? Or
1901. Mm.
Right. That makes sense. So you're going to give us some context.
Well, I just gave some context. It's a similar kind of. It's what Amber's familiar with.
Mhm.
You were just gonna let's just talk about it, and we don't know what we're talking about.
That's true. All right. So give
You
us
did
some
just kind of
context
Drop.
for this story.
Well, Ian Forster's predominantly known for his novels, but he wrote a few collections of short stories. And this one, I cannot remember if I first read it in high school or early college, but it just captured my attention because I love sci-fi, despite being a Victorian British literature major. And this is it. It's some of the early sci-fi that was in part of the increasingly popular trend of the time. Think H.G. Wells, right? And it's very dystopian. It is also remarkably prescient for where we are at today. The man seemed to have some sort of vision into the future with this thing. Think of that literally, metaphorically, or just a wild imagination. I don't care. But he almost seemed to have a vision into how we're living life today and kind of what the ultimate outcome of an overly humanistic, overly governed society with social media will result in.
I would agree with that. So let's give some context for this
Yeah,
story.
somebody summarize the story.
This is not my strong suit, but I'll give it a go, and somebody else step in when necessary. The big issue, as far as the story is concerned, is there's a giant machine that encompasses the world, right? And people live inside of the machine, which is below ground.
Mm-hmm.
And the story follows a mother and her son, who the mother is increasingly more in favor of the goings on of the machine, and people are terrified of actual human contact. They don't go outside, and the son begins to become more and more obsessed with getting outdoors and figuring out what the hell is going on above ground. And it culminates in them finally being reunited and them both dying. Spoiler alert. That came a little late, but spoiler alert. Them dying as the machine grinds to a halt, and the only people that survive are the ones who were rendered homeless because of their heresy in regards to the machine. Is that a decent summary?
I mean,
Or
yeah,
no?
well, it's pretty good, but you left out what the machine does. You just said like, oh, it's a machine.
Oh,
Like,
it's true. Yeah,
I
what
mean,
does the machine do? Somebody describe
dude,
that.
they have this hexagon room. It's got light from nowhere. They
Mhm.
can summon beds. They can summon food. They can talk to people all over the world through their telegram, which is like a holographic computer
Mhm.
plate that glows blue or some kind of crap like that. Like, it's remarkable that this guy. This was in 1909.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's
The TVs exist in 1909?
If
No,
they,
right?
If they did, it was mega, or like in Alexander Graham Bell's head or something. I mean,
Yeah, right.
if there was, it's barely nothing. So yeah, it's like totally visionary. You know, he might have been in on something.
Mhm.
But like you said, the woman Vashti, she loves it. She's all into it. She doesn't. I mean, they don't have time for anything. They're giving all these lectures
Mhm.
and like not actually experiencing things, but experiencing experiences that were experienced many experiences ago.
Right. Watching
a great
videos
way.
of other people exploring,
Right.
giving lectures from their room.
They even said at one point, like, if you can get knowledge on like 10th hand, that's better than first hand knowledge. This machine like progresses as the story goes along,
Yeah.
and then it destroys. You know, it peaks and like that.
Mhm.
So it's really similar to like everything combined in once: science, social media, like microwaves. Like,
mhm.
if you can combine all kind of technological advances into one thing, that's kind of what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, a lot of it reminds me of, well, you've read Fahrenheit 451, but in there they have,
I haven't read that actually.
oh, well, I know you have.
What?
I can't believe you haven't read it. You need to read it.
It's amazing.
In Fahrenheit 451, which is a book I think more people are probably familiar with, his wife, the main character, whose name escapes me at the moment. Do you remember what it is?
No, it's been a long time since I've read it.
Okay. Well, his wife is obsessed with this room they have in their house, which has 3 walls that are encompassed by television screens, and that's where they entertain guests and have meals and that sort of thing, go to concerts, and just that's her whole life. It's similar in that regard to the way things operate in The Machine Stopped, where they do everything from their home.
Well, and it's not just the screens. She has the shells, remember, which are basically AirPods.
Yeah. Oh,
She's
that's
basically
right.
got earbuds in all the time. She cannot
Yeah.
stand to take them out because that disrupts, which is something we also see in The Machine Stops. Anything that disrupts that flow of distracting entertainment, that feedback loop, the superficial connection
Yeah,
that comes with like maybe the one specific friend that knows how to show sympathy or empathy, which is something that's specifically mentioned in The Machine Stops, like those individual connections, but they're super superficial. Anything that disrupts that it's something to be terrified of, not just
Right.
nervous about, but actively terrified of.
Right, like when she goes, she takes a trip to see her son, like in the
Mhm.
beginning, and the stewardess, they all travel on airships, and the main purpose of travel is because the machine calls you to procreate. Like, I think it even specifically says she was the only one traveling of her own free will to go see her son. Everybody else was
Right.
called by the machine to go father a child. But anyway, like she like opens the window and the sun hits her and she like falls because it's so terrifying, and then the stewardess reaches out and tries to steady her. I can't remember if she
Mhm.
does or not, but
She touches her. Yeah.
even that is terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, they describe it in the book as vulgar, like
Mhm.
Yeah.
touching another person, because they're so isolated,
Right.
which kind of makes you think of 2020.
Yeah, I was
Mhm.
thinking that too, man. They really they push that with like Corona and stuff. Like
Mhm.
you can't touch somebody else or you'll get sick. And like it's progressed and the machine stops, or you can't touch somebody else because ultimately it's like heresy against the machine. That's what it like accumulates into.
Yeah.
Because it becomes a religion.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's savage, it's uncivilized, and the machine and the book of the machine tells you all that you are allowed to do and not allowed to do, including early in the story where it mentions, what kind of things are in the book of the machine. And one of the items that's there is if you can't think of the right word, there's a certain button on the machine inside your room all by yourself that you can press, and it will help you come up with the word that you're looking for.
It's like Google.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Grammarly.
Oh yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's like Grammarly.
Like,
We're open to sponsorships, Grammarly. by
No,
the way.
hey, no, we're not. I'm not taking anything from that AI dystopian Orwellian nightmare that is Grammarly.
Oh well, I'd take their money.
Yeah. Well,
That's fair.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
The fact that he thought of that in 1900. I didn't know when it was written. I knew he
Mhm.
died in 1970, and so I was like, oh well, that's not as weird if he wrote it in like 1950. There were TVs and whatnot around then. But if he died in 1970, he's talking about like complete, utter social isolation. I guess not
Mhm.
complete because they talk to people basically over the phone or over video conference.
But are they people?
Right? Well, that's the big question.
Mhm.
And that's another weird thing is when they discuss the televisions in the I don't know if they're televisions. I don't know how you would describe them, but the things they video conference on,
Mhm.
they almost describe it like if you're on a video call with somebody and it's just like really grainy. They're like it's kind of them, but it's not.
yeah, I think the wording was like good enough.
Mhm. Yes,
something
specifically
like
the phrase
that.
"good enough" at a few points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people just accepted what was good enough. Yeah, like
Right.
it wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to get by. And you just like compound. It's almost like this is just hitting me right now. You know how they say aging works? It's like telomerine or telerones.
Telomeres.
Yeah, telomeres. It's like once you copy a telomere over and over and over again, eventually you can't copy it again. You die.
Right.
It just good enough of good enough of good enough of good enough just kind
Mm.
of leads to death. I guess is what I'm trying to make that.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah.
It just hit me right now.
Well, at least leads to social death in that scenario.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, death of humanity or society or
Yeah. And that would be doubly true of the way they talk about gathering knowledge, right? Because what they're talking about, you mentioned it, is like get information 10th hand. You're basically looking at a copy of a copy of a copy,
Right.
and so you look at that's intellectual death there. That's just
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, death in pretty much every aspect of everything.
Yeah.
He carries that out even more explicitly in the story when, from the mother's perspective, Vashti's perspective, it's revealed that travel was no longer necessary, visiting new places, trying to meet new people, because effectively everywhere in the world was now the same, because everyone now lives underground in the machine. They all have the same things. So no matter where you go, the Anthropocene, the kind of age of technology, had utterly ruined the outside of the world, so they're told at least. So everywhere you go is going to be pretty much from one underground location to another underground location, and there's going to be the exact same thing no matter where you go. So when she goes to visit her son, right, she shows up at his apartment, his hive cell, halfway across the world, and other than his physical presence, she has not gone anywhere. She is exactly where she started on her journey. He's just in the room with her, which
Yeah.
of course she finds to be unpleasant because he's physically there.
Right, and he's
Unbearable.
yeah, and he's
Yeah.
and he's saying all kinds of heresy, right?
Mhm.
Because
He's a heretic.
the son, he initially goes out and he wants to tell his mom face to face because he got threatened with homelessness. But how
Mhm.
creepy is it? Like the son's in England and the mom's in Australia, I think. How creepy is that there's no difference in them? Like, because we're kind of starting to get into that in our world, is at least when it comes to major cities. Like all major cities are pretty much
the same.
the same. Like architecture, it's all postmodern concrete, like nonsense. Like infrastructure, you all have the same subways, it's all similar. Everybody speaks English in the language of like big cities are all like melding into the same thing.
That's because one of the aims of postmodernist structure, especially minimalism, especially brutalist minimalism, is to strip you of your human element. It is to reduce it to such a fashion that you basically become part of an unrecognizable cog in the machine. You only become recognized when you fail to function the same way a widget in a factory does.
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit better.
Which part?
Oh, you said that, like, are you talking about, like, postmodern art? I mean, what are you talking about? And then,
Oh, more specifically in this case, architecture. So modernist, postmodernist art forms stepped further and further away from accurate representations of the world, of humanity, of recognizable things. They also stepped away from bourgeois values, tried to slough them off. But more specifically, when it comes to architecture, and again, brutalist, minimalist architecture, like those hardcore glass, concrete, ugly buildings that just make you feel dead inside, not even a little bit, that is meant to make you feel dead inside. It is meant to strip away all the frivolities, all the human elements, and just be a productive environment. Very Marxist.
Yeah, all the way. Oh, that perfect. It's totally Marxist.
Mm-hmm.
It takes away creativity, which
Yes.
is the what, in my opinion, makes humans humans is the ability to create. They take that away, and it's totally Marxist. It's a total like communist agenda to basically create the machine.
The productive classes are more productive when they don't think for themselves. Is basically how that feeds into that philosophy. Yeah. And that architectural aesthetic.
that's something I hardly ever think about. But the level to which environment shapes, not like the people around you, because that's something I think about regularly, but the way that the physical environment, and not like lakes and but the architecture around you can affect cognitive and emotional function and health.
It's huge.
Oh
I
yeah,
gotta
dude.
stop living in an apartment with blank walls, don't I? Am I gonna lose my individuality next week or something?
Look, there's something to be said for having like natural trim and stuff, and like putting log trim up and like putting natural stuff around. Like Zach Bush, you're familiar with him, Carson. I don't know if you
Yeah.
are, Amber, but he has a whole deal on how a city, if you look at it from an aerial view, it just looks like a
Cancer cell.
cancer cell under the microscope.
Yeah.
There's 100% truth to
Oh.
geometric expression of your environment and the direct impact it has on your health and ability to function in the what you might call the greater good or the greater system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Wow.
they can create your function with or geometric expression, which architecture is a form thereof.
Mm-hmm.
That's I'm thinking back to when I worked in an office, because I'm unemployed. But when I worked in an office in Nashville, you worked there too for a little bit, for a while, and I would walk into this blank minimalist building full of cubicles and sad people, and it just slowly ground me into a pulp. And some of the people I met there were nice and friendly, but I left every day feeling like a number and feeling horrifically emotionally depleted. And I wonder how much of that was due, in fact, to the physical environment as much as the thoughts and feelings that were already in the air of such a horrible company.
Well, think of it this way, man. Are you going to set up a cubicle in the Notre Dame Cathedral?
No, that would be absurd.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
Like, even you can't even like picture that happening. So there's absolutely truth to that.
Yeah. So do you think then that the level of simplicity, and I don't want to say minimalism because I enjoy some minimalism, I find it almost cleansing in a way, but I guess extreme minimalism,
Yes.
do you think that is intentional in the modern world? Do you think that it's targeted, or do you think it's just a trend? Because I walk into a lot of places now. Well, freaking Chipotle, dude. It's super minimalist in there. So what do you guys think about that whole trend that's gone on, maybe like 10,
hey,
15 years now?
Amber, you answer that first. I want to find a quote from this.
I think that the initial implementation of it was intentional. There was purpose in there. Now, some of it, I think, was possibly well-intentioned, right? We are looking at people who were trying to strip away some of the traumas and the disillusionment that they had experienced, World War I, World War II, etc., like these deeply disruptive experiences. And they're trying to strip away some of the trauma and bring it, kind of like you said, back down to what are the fundamentals, right? Strip away the BS, strip away the ugliness, reduce it down to something simple. And we even see that in Say like Thoreau, Walden's Pond.
Yeah.
Live simply, suck the marrow out of life. We see it with, Morris, the wallpaper designer in the arts and crafts movement.
What the hell are you talking about?
Okay.
Wallpaper designer. What the?
Hey, let me interject. I hate Henry David Thoreau. That dude was such a mooch off of Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Yeah, a lot of people
Yeah.
feel that way. That's fair. So I'll think of his name later.
Just had to
You
get
know
that
how I am
hatred
with
out there?
names. But yeah, there was an arts and crafts movement where part of what was celebrated was have that which is functional or that which is beautiful in your home. And if it is neither, get rid of it. And if it's both, all the better for you, which is a form of minimalism.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And some weird wallpaper designer got famous from that?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right, go on.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just an odd. I didn't expect to hear about wallpaper designers post 1980. So
Well,
yeah.
and to be fair, his wallpaper is remarkably ornate, and he worked with family members and I believe his wife to create ornate tapestries that inspired the wallpaper. It's a whole thing. But anyways,
What an
yes.
obscure piece of knowledge.
Well, hey, how many podcasts
know,
are about
random
post 1980 wallpaper designers? So we can hit a niche.
We can hit a
clip-
niche market.
Yes, we can clip this, and really give something unique to people.
I'll make sure to tag wallpaper when I post this.
Yeah.
But
You were
yeah.
saying. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
But no, some of the minimalist movements have grounds in finding your humanity and reconnecting to deep spirituality and to one another. And then it also snowballed into something that stripped away humanity. And I think once that became implemented on a large scale, building buildings and factories, organizing entire cities around those types of principles, then we see it become popularized, right? People are like, that building is ugly. We hate this. Why are they building it? Because it's cheap and it's functional. It's fine. You'll get used to it. They get used to it. They start to like it. And then they start mimicking it. And then we have industrial designs that we see as attractive and that actually bring more decor back in. Like, look at a Starbucks these days. Look at a Chipotle. They're not completely devoid of aesthetic design, but they are organized around an industrialist design.
You had a quote?
Well, I would say Amber took the positive approach as to the origin of postmodernism and its subsequent carryings on.
That's
Or-
fair. Yeah, you're right.
My quote comes directly from the Machine Stop, and I will take a negative spin on it just to balance it out. And we'll get Carson's reaction, right? So this is a direct
Alright.
quote. The Central Committee, which is like the head of the machine, okay? It's like the Central Committee like programs the machine or something like that, I don't know. The Central Committee announced the developments. It is true, but they were no more the cause of them than were the kings of the imperialistic period cause of the war. Rather, they did yield to some invincible pressure, which came no one knew whither, and which, when gratified, was succeeded by some new pressure equally invincible. To such a state of affairs, it is convenient to give it the name of progress.
I don't see what that has to do
Well,
with minimalism. but-
everything. So what we call minimalist progress, right? Just the progress of society. As Amber described, it's just, it'd be an attempt to get back to roots, an attempt to strip away things, and get, what, as she said much better than I could. But I'm here to say it comes from an invincible force that even the creators or the implementers of, while they may have had that intention, don't even realize where this push is coming from. Everything comes from the top down, and that invincible force is supernatural. And postmodernism, in my opinion, originates from Satan, in opposition to the creator.
It's a
Well-
strong viewpoint.
He's on track, though, at least on some of it, because much of what we see in postmodernism is humanist, which is fundamentally they'll say, you even see in the story, a lot of kind of spiritualism, but it's very anti-theological. It's anti-God. There is no higher order. There's no theological design to the world. There's no ultimate end that we're striving for. You live, you die. If you're lucky, you live, you die, repeat. But you live, you die. That's it. It's humanism. there is no God. And that is deeply embedded.
Right.
in-
Like that's in the architecture of these postmodern builds. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. There's. Well, finish your thought. Sorry. I don't
No,
mean to interrupt
I'm
you.
agreeing with Amber. Like ultimately, the message of these postmodern architecture and the whole postmodern movement in general, with its art, if I were to like take a pen and crack that glass and call that art, postmodern, and then like throw some blood on it and call that postmodern art, it's the same thing. Ultimately, it's chaos. It promotes chaos, no order, no God.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
atheistic.
So I have a couple of issues here. I feel like postmodernism and minimalism are starting to get conflated a little bit. My general curiosity was specifically about but we can move anyway.
That's true. We did kind of trail off a bit there, didn't we?
Yeah, so I can see that thought process as regarding the postmodernist movement, which I still think is a dumb term, but I can see that
Agreed.
argument as far as that's concerned. If you're gonna move that over to minimalism, I don't see your point, because I would argue that one could make the just to play devil's advocate, because I can't just agree with people. One could make the argument that if you're upset about the idea that the simplicity of minimalism detracts from the spiritual nature of art, one could make the argument that you could appreciate the beauty of spiritual expression through that simplicity, through the appreciation of the simplicity, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I was speaking strictly on postmodernism. Like I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, all postmodern is minimalism, but not all minimalism is postmodernism.
I don't
Yes.
actually know.
Yeah, minimalism predates postmodernism.
I would totally agree with you, Carson. Like you can be minimalistically simple in nature. Nature is simple.
Mhm.
Nature is minimalist.
Yeah.
Yes. We see various minimalist movements throughout time periods where we see reactions against decadence. We could kind of loosely label those minimalist in principle, even though if they're not truly minimalist in how we understand it, but they are trying to minimalize the detractions of the physical world from true human experience, spiritual welfare, religious engagement, etc.
So then, where does that, if we're going to follow this line of thinking, where does that minimalism cross over into something that could be sinister or anti-spiritual or satanic, like y'all are describing? Because the lines here seem to be blurred to me
Mhm.
at the moment. So somebody explain how you think that happens.
That's fair. I think it's when it crosses into the territory of the postmodernist. Words.
It's a hard word,
It
man.
is. I get tongue-tied easily, too. My students get used to it. But the postmodernists who were disillusioned, again, World War I, Great Depression, World War II, all kinds of little wars and upsets in between, they lost faith in their government, right? They lost faith in their culture. They saw the world as far more corrupt and less optimistic than possibly had ever really been seen before in modern times. And so that move towards minimalism got married with Marxist and communist objectives, and that's when it became, in my opinion, something sinister. Now, have I deeply researched the communist, socialist, Marxist movements? No. So am I possibly being a bit oversimplistic here? Absolutely. But that is part of where that sinister marriage occurs, that evil emerges.
Well, Karl Marx was not a nice man, and
He was
he was very religious. You should see who he worshipped. I'll just say that.
That's fair.
So you Satan worshiper?
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that.
yep.
I mean, I'm not surprised, but I didn't know that.
That's fair.
So I don't know if I should bring this up now, but now that I mentioned it, I guess I have to. One of the things that I've noticed in a lot of dystopian literature, and this could be a weird subject to broach with my sister here, but we're gonna talk about it anyway, because I want to know what you guys think. One of the things that seems to exist, not just in the machine stops, I have a hard time saying that as well, not just in the machine stops, but in a lot of other dystopian literature that I've read, specifically books like 1984 or Fahrenheit 451, is the disruption of healthy sexuality.
Heck yeah.
It's a relatively, I think, big theme in the Machine Stops. It's certainly a big theme in George Orwell's 1984, which I have right here, because I was talking about it with one of you the other day, and I can't remember which, and I'm going to prove a point to one of you at some point tonight. But it's a big theme in a lot of these books, the ruling class taking the sexuality of the masses and turning it into something that's either distasteful or a chore or something of that nature.
Controlling it, dude. That's what they're doing. They're controlling it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go on. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Because it seems to be a big theme. Why would that be problematic? Why do they do it? I'm curious as to what y'all think, because it crops up everywhere, and it seems to crop up, at least where I've seen it, we're talking a lot about humanism tonight, but where I've seen it, it crops up in a lot of specifically religious cultures, and so that's confusing to me, but they're talking about it in dystopian literature. So, proceed. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I got a few thoughts.
All right.
Go for it.
Talk to me.
Well, first of all, humanism and religion, I mean, there's no difference, dude. Humanism is a religion.
Yes.
Second of all, what's the first command that the Creator gives after the Garden of Eden? Be fruitful and multiply. They're coming after the Creator's commands, dude. It all comes back to the opposition to the Creator, right? You're not going to be fruitful and multiply if you can't, and the machine stops, right? You don't have time. You got all these other ideas to have. It's just a way to stop the Creator's command, and ultimately, not to get too meta, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, it's a war against the offspring of God and the offspring of God's enemies, right? They're always at war with the progeny of God, which is us. We are the descendants of God, and the opposition is who rebelled against God, wanting to be in His place, and they're at war with us for all eternity. That's the story of the Bible. That's the story of what we're seeing in our society. This transgender, postmodern, like complete chaos nightmare that we find ourselves in right now, versus like OG values that normal people just want to be left alone. It's just a constant like weighing of the scales, and procreation, absolute, like the natural order, absolutely is probably one of the key cogs into that. Just a family, just a traditional like raise your family in peace, and we answer only to God, live in peace type thing, versus the state taking control of what the father should be.
Do you know what's more threatening to the political order than the individual who thinks for himself?
No.
The family who follows or thinks with that individual outside of what the political order wants. Intimate human connection. I mean, what's more intimate and deep and raw than a sexual connection, right? Than intimacy, than romantic partnerships that create new life from scratch, right? You are 3D printing brand new humans that you can train to think outside of the political order, and maybe even against the political order. So the only thing that's more threatening against the political order than the individual who thinks for themselves is the family unit that exists beyond the control of the political order. That's why in most of these dystopian novels, and frankly most of the utopian ones as well, I would suggest almost all utopias are dystopias, but you see the family by and large no longer exists.
Yeah, and Amber, to piggyback on that, not only in the dystopian novels, but in right now 2024 society. Like, that's the whole communist agenda, break up the family. That's what you got, these abortion clinics, a state as your father, you incentivize single motherhood. Like, it's not just in the dystopian novel, it's happening right now in this great state of Tennessee and all over this country.
Yeah, and if I can jump in real quick.
Talking to your mic if you're going to jump in.
If I can jump in real quick and plug an early episode from episode 4 of the Georgia Guidestones. What is the main guide in the Guidestones? It's maintain humanity under 500 million.
Oh, that's
so
right.
it's like, if you think about their guide to recreating humanity, if you want to say an occultic guide to creating like restructuring humanity. That's one of them, is to maintain, population growth.
Interesting.
And
So,
that might have been a
check out that episode.
concern off and on throughout deep history that I'm unaware of, but definitely in the advent of the Anthropocene. Population control and population minimalization to maximize resources becomes an increasing concern. First at kind of more an academic, scholarly level, a political level, and then eventually it bleeds over into pop culture, like science fiction.
What the does Anthropocene mean? Is that some kind of thing that makes you fall asleep?
Yes. And in fact, for most people, talking about it probably does make them fall asleep pretty quickly.
What is that?
We've already gone into 1980s wallpaper, so just give us the definition of that, and we will also reach a niche.
So it is the geological age in which... That's fair. We're going to reach a lot of niche audiences today. It is the geological age in which human presence becomes recorded in the landscape, in the chemical composition or changes in the air, the water. Basically, human presence, kind of industrial presence, is affecting geology and
That's
the
a
environment.
fun word.
I know, right?
It's a good one to pull out
Have I
at
not-
parties when you want people to think you're smart.
Amber, do you know when that is off the top of your head? When did that start? I'm just curious.
So I don't know that
Is it about
there's
the
like
1860s?
before then.
Okay.
Yeah, because
For sure before.
during the 1860s, you're already looking at, I believe, the second industrial revolution. So we would have been looking at prior to then.
Yeah, Murph's trying to talk about Tartaria. It's not
I'm
important.
just curious. I'm just curious as to what they say.
Well, so okay, I find that discussion interesting. Not the Anthropocene thing, but the whole sexuality discussion.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I was reading. Well, I was talking to one of you the other day
Not
about Winston.
Dude, you're
in
absolutely screaming into that.
Sorry, I got excited. I was talking about Winston in 1984, the main character of 1984. How George Orwell describes him having sex with his wife as just this unpleasant duty that they have to fulfill. Was it you?
I don't know. I mean, I've read 1984. I know what you're talking about. And then there's Julia.
Right, and then he has this super emotional, fiery affair with Julia. But the way he describes Winston and his wife, it's this like sad, limp, awkward affair is the way that Ray Bradbury describes whatever the main character's name is, and his wife is the way that I would imagine these people who are having to fly across the country as a chore to go procreate, interact with other people as well. And I think deeper, perhaps, than the idea of the nuclear family is the idea simply of intentional, deep connection with another human being. I think that goes even deeper than the breakup of the nuclear family, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about it. Well, I don't know about even deeper, but I would agree that it's equally important. Like, what do you think all these sitcoms that push just hooking up at bars and you can just, what do you think, like all these short-term relationships that get pushed in the pop culture? Doesn't that kind of lend credence to your point to kind of make it as almost a trivial thing? Then there's no real connection.
A little bit. And if I was going to be exceptionally conspiratorial, I would suggest that those are perhaps the precursor of something like this. Because, and I've watched a lot of sitcoms, most of the casual sex that goes on there is at least in somebody's searching for some kind of real, genuine connection and either having a great time along the way or feeling really bad about themselves because of all the casual sex they're having along the way. One of those two things is happening, but they're still searching for a connection. In The Machine Stops in 1984 and all of these dystopian novels, people aren't searching for a connection anymore. As a matter of fact, it becomes a major inconvenience because now I have to take time out of my day to go make an attempt to procreate. It's just another chore. I mean, even the act of sex isn't fun. It's just another chore. And so there's not even the search or desire for emotional intimacy or like even the fun of having sex. There's none of that. It's been destroyed. At least in these sitcoms, right? People are having a good time.
Well, you got to start somewhere. You got to start the train to hell somewhere. You know what I'm saying, though?
You're such a happy person.
Well, I'm saying, how are you going to
Jeez.
implement your goals if you don't start your goals?
Oh my god.
Don't you know? You know I'm right, Carson. You know I'm right. normalize. Like how would, like, normally you would, in the, I don't know, we'll call it the old days, or in the age of order, you would find
like
your
1950 or something.
Yeah, you would find your mate because of, you would know them through your family and through your like familial circles in your local community.
You'd give her dad 3 cows, take her home, beat her, and then
I
have
mean,
a
I'm
couple
not
of kids. Yeah.
I'm not
Gosh.
advocating something that primitive, but something similar to, hey, everybody knows each other and you already know, but they've like they're isolating people more and more, and it's a frog in boiling water. Sure, it's
That was
like-
frog in boiling water for anyone else who didn't understand
What?
that at first. Did you
I
understand?
did.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
you just change it a little bit and everything's fine. You change it a little bit more and everything's fine.
Mhm.
And you do that, it's probably going to be 66.6 times. You do that 66.6 times and then you're dead. You've boiled alive. Your life has changed and there's no going back. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep. I do.
Well, push back. You're the king of pushback. Push back on that if you don't agree.
I don't know if I agree or not. I will say this. I think that you're making a big assumption there in that the search for meaning and its happening to run into casual sex is pushing towards the destruction of human connection. That's a big assumption you're making. I'll say that.
How's it going so far? You think people are more connected or less connected than they were in 1941?
I mean, I'm pretty sad, so we can start there. I don't know about other people.
Anybody who's honest will admit that people in 2024 are less connected than they were 100 years ago.
No, man. I mean,
and if you deny that, you're lying.
You're right. Just go out and look at people interacting in bars or public places where people used to meet other people, and then hop on like a dating app or something, right?
Oh yeah, we didn't even get it. Dating apps is perfect example. Good one.
It's it's
Yeah.
the perfect example because you're not comfortable making a real human connection. You've got to like, what? Swipe around at pictures for 8 hours? What the hell are those even for? They're retarded. They're completely retarded. It robs you of any genuine excitement. The real reason we go out to meet people in the first place is human connection, the excitement of like the romantic chase, right? Which I think what drives most guys to the dating scene is it's fun, dude. So yeah, no, I think the good chunk of what you're saying is correct. I feel like you have something to say. You're looking at me real weird. What?
I think we've kind of slid, maybe bled over into slightly two different things here a little bit. Whereas I think Murph was talking more about the sexual culture. You're talking more about individuals seeking sexual contact. And those are two very different things. So, using the sitcoms and the characters as an example, right? The individual is going to go out and seek connection or seek an escape from the that their life is, right? And that may culminate in some sort of sexual connection. That's potentially, not necessarily, but potentially different from the sexual culture, which may encourage people to engage in frivolous, lighthearted, meaningless sexual encounters, not even relationships, just encounters. So the individual who's seeking is different from the movement, especially the socio-political one that may be occurring to encourage you to behave in a particular way.
Which is why you have to normalize those things through propaganda.
Exactly. So
and
you
then the
you
sum of
normalize
actions
it.
equals the propaganda that you're trying to get.
And once you normalize it, then that act of seeking engagement potentially becomes just an act of seeking temporary pleasure. And then after a while, as we know, pleasure diminishes, right? It's what's a proper term? Something of diminishing returns? Principle of diminishing returns? Is that the
I
proper
don't know,
term?
a vapor, asymptotic.
No,
I
I
have
mean,
no idea what
I don't
that
know
is,
what
dude.
the first word in that description is, but it's the law, the rule, the
Something like that, yeah.
Principle
Y
of
equals
diminishing
1
returns.
over X would be asymptotic. You're never going to hit X, but
So it's something along those lines.
Autism, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it's hey, don't knock it. But it is one of those things where, the more you engage in it, the less desirable it becomes, or the less pleasurable it becomes, and so eventually you stop seeking it, right? And when you stop seeking human connection is when you're easiest to control.
So like my old roommate, when he threw out his pocket pussy, he was done. There was no more pleasure he got from that.
Dang, Carson, you really went there.
Dude.
I don't know. Is the P word? Are we gonna have to bleep the P word? I don't know. I'll have to research that. We'll have to find out if that's in the algorithm or not.
I'll take a note of it just in case.
Okay.
I hope he doesn't listen to this.
At least you're making it interesting. I got to give you that. You made that interesting.
That's what I'm here for, bud. You're here to make me depressed, and I'm here to not. Okay, so
Have you ever read
I'm
A
starting
Brave
to
New
see your
World?
point, though. No, I haven't. I need to.
Go read that. That will help inform this conversation, sir.
So to summarize,
Mr.
what
Huxley.
I think you guys are saying, is that the loss of the search for genuine meaning results in simply seeking out pleasure. And we all know that pleasure from any given thing diminishes over time, especially with repetition.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, over a period of time, assuming that people stop seeking genuine, meaningful relationships and are just having sex for pleasure, the act of sex will lose any legitimate pleasure. They'll lose any sexual desire. The whole romantic dance will lose its enticement over time. Is that what you guys are suggesting?
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. And you can extrapolate that to far beyond sex. You're describing a philosophy. That philosophy is called nihilism. And such a philosophy exists right now among the so-called progressive elite.
Well, I mean, I'm one of those people sometimes, man.
We are all, man. You got to
Yeah.
pay rent. You got to survive somehow. Sometimes you just got to go numb.
Being an adult sucks.
Yeah, that's what they want. That's what they want. That's the whole purpose of everything that's happening. It's all by design, in my opinion. But they call me a conspiracy theorist.
No
I think there's an enemy to God on the earth, but that's a conspiracy.
I don't know that it's all by design, but yeah, they're definitely evil forces at work. I mean, if you believe at all in right and wrong, good and evil, then you can't help but look at some of this that does its best to strip away our sense of who we are as human beings and a desire to have deep, meaningful connections and not see that as evil.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
That was well said. Good job.
Which is kind of ironic because I do, in fact, freaking love reading dystopian literatures, and they're hella depressing, man. But I don't know. There's something that draws me to them.
Why do you think that is?
I don't. Maybe it's a way of dealing with some of the that we've just kind of collectively handled in our lives. And when I read through some of these, I'm like, well, we're not there yet. So things are looking up, man. One of my favorite stories, also dystopian, Ray Bradbury, Soft Rains Will Come. I think I told you to read it at one point. I don't know if you ever did. Hella depressing, dude, but I love it. It's beautiful. It's like reading Poe. He's hella creepy, but it's beautiful.
I get Ray Bradbury's short stories confused because they're all, like, so many of them are depressing and science fiction-y. So
Personal
I don't know.
suggestion, read The Pedestrian, Soft Rains Will Come, and The Veldt. V-E-L-D-T, The Veldt.
But on a deeper level, because I know a lot of people who gravitate towards dystopian concepts at the very least. What's that franchise that did The Hunger Games?
Ah, yes.
Those were freaking popular, man. And most of your popular, what's that? It had Harrison Ford in it and a bunch of robots. Blade Runner.
iRobot.
No.
Oh, sorry.
iRobot
Totally
did
wrong.
not have Harrison
Gosh,
Ford in
that's
it.
dreadful.
Blade Runner's a great movie.
Blade Runner, even a lot of Star Wars has some significantly dystopian elements. Why do you think, especially in the sci-fi world, but in a lot of areas of literature and cinema, dystopian themes are so appealing to people? Anybody? I'm open.
Look at the heroes.
Can Carrie Fisher's hot, but that's not what I'm asking about.
I know, but you're not looking at the heroes. You're looking at boobs in that answer. So look at the heroes. What are they doing? What are they seeking? What are they accomplishing?
Well, I didn't read the rest of the Hunger Games because the books sucked, so I don't actually know.
The writing sucked. It was a good story.
Yeah, no, the writing sucked. The
was
story's
not-
fantastic.
was not particularly
Accurate.
good.
The writing was terrible.
I've read worse. I wouldn't say it's like terrible.
What have you read that's worse than the Hunger Games?
I don't, it could have been better. All right, let's move on.
The writing's complete. Anyway,
Dear.
you, Suzanne Collins.
All right.
You
Man, you're making a lot of work for yourself.
Sorry, I just hate the writing in those so much.
If we miss one of these, we go down in the algorithm, and we need money to get YouTube Premium because Lord, I hate ads.
That's true.
All right, continue.
What about the heroes? I don't understand what
What
you're
are they
getting at.
seeking? What are they chasing after?
Relief from tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They want I'm thinking. Gosh, I'm such a nerd. Thinking of Luke and like, what is it? Is it The Empire Strikes Back, where he's all worried about Han and Leia and his friends? You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you gonna tell me what's on your mind? Or are you just gonna make me keep guessing?
I'm a teacher. This is
Jeez.
what I do.
You're not Socrates over here. Good heavens.
I use the Socratic method for teaching.
All right. What?
They're seeking connection. They're seeking meaning. They're seeking to change the world for the better. I mean, look, Luke is seeking kind of this heroic role. He wants adventure. He wants excitement. But the adventure and the excitement won't be enough if there's not a greater purpose. Katniss is the same thing. Now, she's basically 2 steps from dead inside, right? And then when her sister gets, chosen.
It's Primrose.
Thank you. When Primrose gets chosen in the lottery, she's
You laughing at?
basically there.
Carson's laughing that I've read a book. I've read a lot of books. Okay, I used to read all the time.
I know you read.
and
Just
then I
the
started
way
playing Minecraft.
barked out Primrose. And then
He's right, though.
no, I know he's right. It's just the way you said that made me laugh.
I appreciated it.
So they're seeking connection.
They're seeking connection to, again, look at her relationship with PETA, right? Someone who they do their best to
Team
strip
Gale.
down. Huh?
I'm Team Gale.
Okay, that's fine. For a brief moment, I was too. Whatever. Who gives a shit? Anyways, she ends up with PETA. You're interrupting.
Peter's a stupid name too. It sounds
Yeah,
like
it's
somebody
dumb,
who can't
but
talk tried to
it's
say
bread.
Peter and got confused. Anyway,
It's
sorry.
the
you're,
bread.
You're okay.
His family were bakers.
Oh, I see. That's a
Did you
terrible joke.
really not know that?
She was from Tennessee too.
Oh, are you serious? He's named after the bread.
Aren't like the various
They
brothers all
They were
named after like
bakers.
bread? Or
I
am
know they were bakers, and I know
insane?
pita is a type of
Jeez,
bread.
I'm retarded.
It's not spelled the way pita bread is spelled.
Yeah,
but I
okay,
assumed
yeah,
he
there you
was
go,
named
yeah.
that because it sounded like pita bread.
Oh,
Dude,
That-
I may
no, Amber, you're totally right. That kind of stuff is in literature everywhere.
Yeah.
Sirius in Harry Potter.
Right.
Sirius is the dog. He can
Mhm.
transform into a dog. It's kind of
Mhm.
subtle stuff is all over the place. Carson's just in denial.
Oh, that brings up another good one. So, Madeline L'Engle, A Wrinkle in Time.
not well. Camazotz is dystopian.
Yes. What are they seeking to accomplish when they are battling Camazotz?
Is that the Shining Oprah? Is that what that is?
Shining Oprah.
Yeah. When I hear Wrinkle in Time, I think of Oprah glowing.
Ah.
It's not Oprah, but there's the Mrs. Who, I believe, is a black lady who is built like Oprah.
All right. Well,
Wait, it's not Oprah?
Is it
I'm
Oprah?
pretty sure Oprah is a glowing angel in the Wrinkle in
Can
Time.
somebody? I'll do it, John. I
I'm
feel
sorry,
like
I totally
John,
derailed
will
that
you look
thought,
up the cast of A Wrinkle in Time?
Yes.
Oh, I
Of
thought
the
it
old
was
one,
Oprah.
not the new one, and see if Oprah's in it.
No, she's in the new one.
I'm thinking of the old one.
Oh, I was thinking of the one that came out 4 years ago. Or
I
something.
haven't seen the new one.
Anyways, think about Margaret. What is she trying to accomplish
I don't
by battling
remember.
Camazotz?
I remember Charles Wallace, and they tried to make him a girl.
I have
Oprah is in A Wrinkle in Time. Just
I have-
to settle that.
Hey, I want to read this book, and
That's
I haven't
the
read
new
it
one.
yet, so I'm just gonna detach myself.
All right, what?
Well, Charles Wallace is trying to use intellect to battle this all-encompassing power of Camazotz, that draws you in and forces you to be just like everyone else, right? He's trying to resist it with intellect, and he fails. Margaret resists it with her love for him, her protective instinct to take care of her baby brother. She's seeking that deeper emotional connection, that security of familial love. She's seeking her dad, right? So she's seeking to protect her younger brother. She's seeking to regain her father and be protected by him. She's seeking family in her battle against Camazotz, which, FYI, Camazotz is a reference to a Mesoamerican bat, a death bat, some sort of god of death. So Camazotz is not a term that Madeline L'Engle apparently made up.
Oh.
I don't know if she knew that it was a reference to a Mesoamerican bat god of death, but apparently it is.
Like Molech.
Oh gosh, I tried to block out about 40 seconds of that so I could ruin the context, so no spoilers what happened.
That's fair.
So that's what I was doing.
Okay, so your point is she's seeking connection, though.
Yes.
You're opening a book like you got something to read. What do you have?
I made a note about Camazotz somewhere as I was... Here it is.
Well, I mean, I see the similarity between, like, the way they live and their rooms in the
Mhm.
machine stops to the homes on Camazotz, which are all the same. And everybody does the same thing at the same time of day.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't the overall thing like why is dystopian like hit so hard with why are people so interested? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's because in
That's
a
my
way,
question.
like if I was gonna have a quick answer on that, because we know subconsciously or intuitively that we live in a dystopian world.
Explain.
Like it hits us on a subconscious level because we're living it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're told we're living in a free country, but we got to bust our butts to pay rent. We got to go to a 9-to-5 job that like 95% of people hate. You have to go to school. You have to do this. You have to do that. But you live in a free country. How double speak does that sound?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're told we're brave. We do all these brave things. Land of the free, home of the brave. But we don't do anything. We sit at home and watch football. We eat popcorn. We get fat. We're not doing anything brave, but we're told we're brave by doing all these wars and stuff. It hits so hard because we're living it, boys
Mm-hmm.
and girls. We are living in a dystopian world.
Yeah. It touches on our fears, not only of what is, but what could be, and our desire to escape it. So the portion of the machine stops that made me think of Camazotz and A Wrinkle in Time was not only the sections where everyone's the same, everyone is acting in lockstep, but the specific portion where he's crawling out of the machine for the very first time to see the real world, the earth above. And he talks about, the struggles getting there. He says, as I climbed, the rough edges cut through my gloves so that my hands bled. The light helped me for a little, and then came darkness. And worse still, silence, which pierced my ears like a sword. The machine hums. Did you know that? Its hum penetrates our blood and maybe even guides our thoughts. Who knows? I was getting beyond its power. Then I thought, the silence means that I am doing wrong. But I heard voices in the silence, and again they strengthened me. And it goes on further from there, but that hum, doesn't that sound reminiscent of that kind of rhythmic thumping that is associated with Camazotz and the kids all dribbling their basketballs in rhythm with one another in A Wrinkle in Time?
I see your point. And to perhaps paint a little more personal picture, I think that is perhaps more appropriately represented by, I'm going to use a personal example here, people like me who, when I'm at home alone, or if I'm getting ready for bed, I will put on a television show, almost always a sitcom, just for that background noise. And you could take all sorts of standpoints as far as that's concerned. He's lonely. He's a sad. He's a weird some. All of that stuff, right? But to a large degree, it almost reminds me of that desire to have that hum in the background or that basketball bouncing on the sidewalk methodically to let me know I'm a part of this thing, right? And that's kind of scary in a lot of ways.
Well,
You're reaching out towards me.
Yeah, dude, you're saying great things. The back, I do the same thing. Like you put on the background music or you play the background video game. But I would suggest that you
background video games.
you play video games and then you watch. I play video games and watch a video in the background. That's what I meant. I combine the two things.
Okay,
Sue
I see
me.
your point now.
Anyway, you were saying it's to feel part of a greater thing, which maybe that's true. But another angle is to escape from something else, and that something else would be self-reflection, and so because self-reflection implies that you're looking for who you are. When you look for who you are, that implies that you find accountability to who made you, and that's what I think the hum kind of represents. Is a way to when you know you haven't been doing right and you have not lived your life right. An escape from that is what the machine offers. Does that make sense? And to turn that noise off, to turn that background hum off, to turn off the towers in Westworld, would be to realize that you are accountable to something else. And that's why I think the crux of the issue is. Silence means self-reflection. Self-reflection means self-revelation. Self-revelation means you answer beyond this life.
In silence, you can only hear yourself.
You're going to make me cry. Hot. All right. Jeez. Okay.
I would also suggest that you're possibly kind of conflating a couple of things that maybe aren't entirely equivalent, in that you putting on something to help you sleep at night is, I think, like Murph said, it is a form of escapism. It's quieting that one niggling part of your brain that just won't shut up and let you relax, right? I do it. I have a fan. You get remarkably annoyed at how I cannot sleep without a fan
It's weird.
Oh, Amber,
running.
I'm the same way. I have to sleep with the fan. But
Yeah.
isn't it just, it's like the machine. It's an
Yes.
imitation. It's an imitation of the crickets at night. It's an
Yeah.
imitation
Yeah.
of the wind blowing in the leaves.
Yes.
Isn't
Yeah.
that disturbing? We're living in it right now.
I have adapted to sleeping with my windows open before, and when I got used to that, I didn't need the fan. But then when I had to close the windows because it was too hot, I had to go back to the fan, and that was disruptive for a while. So for me, it's anything that just helps block out street noise or quiet my mind or whatever. If it's watching a sitcom, then it's simulating a form of human connection because you hear voices.
And it's good enough.
That makes that
That's
sound
good
way
enough. Yeah, that's true.
more sad than sleeping with a fan.
Well,
Am I wrong? I mean, somebody tell me I'm wrong, but I think I'm pretty on point.
I did not mean that.
And I mean, you're not wrong.
But on the flip side, what I was saying is that us seeking to kind of quiet that little part of our brain, either with nature's noises because we sleep with windows
John, are you
open,
still on
or
me?
the
Switch to Amber.
fan, or a sitcom, is not entirely the same as seeking the hum of the machine, which is mindlessness. There's a difference between seeking escape to quiet your mind to sleep, and there's between that and embracing the hum of the machine or Camazotz or whatever it may be, so you do not have to think for yourself even when you're awake. And I would suggest that's not something any of us do.
Well, I would pose a question for you then, because I'll agree there's certainly a distinction.
Mm-hmm.
But does one lead to another without discipline?
That was going to be the, yeah.
I mean, that's the whole
Absolutely.
point. That's the
Mhm.
whole point. If you're not disciplined,
Yeah.
then boom, you're down the road. You don't even know you're there.
If you are constantly seeking that escape, not only to try to sleep, but also to get by in your day-to-day life, you find yourself on a path towards seeking the hum of the machine.
And the
Wow.
flies, to use a Westworld reference, the flies are buzzing all around you. You don't even notice.
Yeah.
Everyone
No,
go watch Westworld.
It's a good show.
Is it going to let me sleep at night?
No.
No.
Okay, then no.
It's excellent, though. It's very good. But to illustrate your point, this is going to be another depressing personal example, but like there's
Just get it all out there, bud.
when I was working in that office I was talking about earlier, I was working on Excel spreadsheets and a bunch of bullshit all day, and I would take my phone, plug it up because it couldn't last the whole day without dying, and just have some kind of. I heard the term the other day and it pissed me off. It was on a podcast I was listening to with Nick Offerman, who he's everybody loves Parks and Rec, but he's talking about comfort shows. And how Parks and Rec was in the office were some of the first comfort shows. And I would literally sit there and pretend to work all day with one of those running in the background. And I think that's similar to exactly what you guys are talking about, which is sad, but that seeking of having that buzz going, not alcohol buzz, but the sound buzz, going 24/7 such that you don't have to self-reflect. You don't have to address whatever demons may exist or address your accountability. You don't have to do any of that. It's just constant noise to distract you.
Yeah, and I'm just as guilty as the rest. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just thought in my head, like there's a room in Minnesota, I think, that's so quiet. I think it's in Minnesota. Could be wrong. I think it's Minnesota. That's so quiet that people go insane going in there.
Yeah.
It's like a bunch of foam triangles upon foam triangles, and they can like hear their blood rushing, and they just go mad from silence.
Yeah.
I know it won't make you feel any better, but the last few years as I've started having panic attacks over doing my comps and then trying to write this dissertation, I've done the exact same thing with K-dramas and C-dramas. Don't judge me.
It's so weird.
You know what? Don't judge me.
I'm going to judge you.
That's fair. Do it quietly.
That's what I do. Yeah. We found a really depressing point in this conversation.
I mean, it's sounding ecclesiastical, right? So what's the conclusion of the whole matter?
Meaningless. Meaningless. Everything's meaningless.
It's not the conclusion of the whole matter.
Oh,
Gosh.
well, what's the conclusion of the whole matter then? Because that's what I got out of it.
Only connect, which is the epigraph of E.M. Forster's Howard's End.
Only connect.
Only connect.
I don't know what an epigraph is either. But
It's basically just a quick saying that you might find at the start of a book or a chapter to help frame its thematic context.
well, then what's an epigram?
Isn't
Are
it
those
just
different
like a
things?
pithy saying?
What about an epitaph? I've heard of that one.
Yeah,
Isn't
that's
that
in
more like
Shakespeare.
just I think an epitaph, isn't that more along the lines of like what you would find on like a gravestone?
Or like a eulogy.
Yeah, that's in Much Ado About
Okay.
Nothing.
There's
when
epicycles and
No,
epipens.
epigram is in.
An epitaph, I know for sure, is in Much Ado About Nothing when Leonardo tells what's his name?
Leonardo.
Claudio. His name is Leonato.
You got
suddenly Italian real
quick.
It's Leonardo to tells Claudio to hang an epitaph upon his ex-dead girlfriend's tomb, who's not actually dead.
Yes, see a quick saying on the gravestone.
Okay, so that's what an epitaph is. But what the is an epigram?
An epigram, as I just said, is, I believe, a quick kind of pithy saying.
What's an epiphone?
We didn't talk about epiphones.
That's a guitar brand.
No, it's not.
Is an epiphone a guitar brand?
Oh, no. Is that how you say it, though?
Epiphone?
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the fake Gibsons.
Right.
I guess I don't think I've ever heard that word said aloud, so it just struck me weird. I think you're right now that I think about it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
am. Fight me.
Oh, tell me what you think. All right, what's an epicenter? Come on, quick. Quick. You took too long. It's where the earthquake comes from. It's
Name
what
three things that aren't Jackie Chan.
Water, fire, air. You
Great
cannot get me to lose at that game. I played it way too much in high school.
It's a great game. It's a great game.
Does it just speak to how old I am that I don't know what the hell that game is?
It's literally a game where you just walk up on a random person and just scare them and be like, hey, name three things that aren't Jackie Chan. And you'd panic because all you can think about then is Jackie Chan.
Yeah. Okay.
We've devolved into mindless chit-chat.
We have. I tried to bring us back around, but you got us back
Sorry,
off
I
again.
got interested in epigraphs and epigrams and epitomes and whatever those epipens, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to note that with his epigraph of Only Connect, The Machine Stops was published originally in 1909. Howard's End was published in 1910.
Ah.
So it's possible he was working on them concurrently. I don't know that for sure. Apparently, I believe he kind of wrote in kind of maybe batches and then sometimes
Yeah.
publish things later. But I can't help reading The Machine Stops and reading Howard's End, especially with that epigraph of only connect, which is very much like screw class differences, step away from the modern world and its distractions, seek human connection in its most meaningful ways, in its most powerful ways. Not only human, but also natural connection in its most powerful ways. I can't help but see the short story and the novel is connected with that theme underlying them, because at the very end of the story, what we see is mother and son finally touch in a way that's not repulsive. It's literally in their last moments, but it's comfort.
It's not sexual. It's not weird.
It's not sexual. It's not weird.
Dude, Card, you just ruined such a
You
good, well-presented conclusion by Amber.
Sorry.
But what is human connection ultimately? Like, I totally agree. Like, but what makes human connection valuable, right? It's just you're connecting to God.
Mm-hmm.
It's the image of God in everybody that when two souls meet, that's God being there.
I mean, we could see it as a form of touching the eternal, yeah.
And that's what, you know, what the postmodernist is trying, and these dystopian nightmare, they try to stop that.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately they're like, what's more natural than not to get off these vitamins? But nature made, man. The God made the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get any more natural than the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
This is part of why I'm drawn more towards the long 19th century, where we see the rise of romanticism and naturalism and this move against the age of reason, right? Of trying to the earliest movements, as far as we see them in modern times, of moving towards trying to kind of lock everything down to a logic or a fact or something that can be reasoned out separate from faith and God. And then we see many of the romanticists in particular, many of whom were not religious in any organized sense, or many of whom were actually just atheists straight up, but they sought deep spiritual connection, sometimes with God through nature and sometimes just with nature or with other humans. It was an attempt to step away from the dehumanizing aspect of the Enlightenment, of trying to reduce everything to logic and reason, and re-embrace human connection.
I would argue that logic and reason leads to human connection. The age of reason, you know, is everything that they do, and by they I could rant for 100 hours, but everything they do is inverted. The age of reason is the age of dogma. It's simply another religion.
Mm-hmm.
Logic and reason leads you connection, leads you to God, leads you to love, empathy, which is ultimately the truth.
Mm-hmm.
What is claimed as reason is a dogmatic religion given to the profane, which is tied equally into postmodernism and for lack of a better word, science.
Mm-hmm.
You touched on an interesting theme there. That, I think, is a pretty big theme in The Machine Stops and in another book by Mr. Isaac Asimov.
Yeah. I'll add my throw that
by
in there
Mr.
too.
Isaac Asimov, the father of science fiction, called
Foundation
the
trilogy?
Foundation trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And in The Machine Stopped, it manifests itself, stops. The machine stops. It's hard I always think stopped. But anyway, The Machine Stops. It manifests itself as their faith in this hard, cold, scientific, for lack of a better term, machine. In the Foundation trilogy, science and the products thereof literally become their own religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hey, I got another quote here. This is the son talking to the mother, Kuno, right? The mother is Kuno, which means it's a German word, means
That's
family.
the son.
Oh, yeah, right. The son is
Yeah.
Kuno, German word for family. The mother's Vashti, which is Persian, which means goodness. So it's ironic because they don't have neither family nor goodness. All right, Kuno's talking to his mom. At this, you are beginning to worship the machine, he said coldly. You think it irreligious of me to have found a way out on my own. It was just what the committee thought when they threatened me with homelessness. At this, she grew angry. I worship nothing, she cried. I am most advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but at the end of the book, it becomes obvious that she worships the machine.
But
Mhm.
the book is a progression, dude. It's not a
Mhm.
book; it's a short story. But where are we right now, dude? These scientists, these atheists, they worship nothing. They're most advanced. They know everything.
Mm-hmm. And by worshiping nothing, they worship themselves. One of the notes I put in my margins is the abolition of religion begets religion, and kind of building off of what you just read. The second great development was the reestablishment of religion. Those who had long worshipped silently now began to talk. They described a strange feeling of peace that came over them when they handled the book of the machine, the pleasure that it was to repeat certain numerals out of it, however little meaning those numerals conveyed to the outward ear, the ecstasy of touching a button, however unimportant, or of ringing an electric bell, however superfluously.
Dude, Amber, first of all, you're a great reader.
Thank you.
Second of all, how much does that? You could replace every single thing you said right there, but by reading random nonsense from a peer-reviewed paper, by spouting off news articles and what this study said that was paid for by some huge corporate conglomerate that no one even understands who owns.
Mm-hmm.
You could just replace that with what we're experiencing right now.
Mm-hmm. This is legit part of why I'm hesitant to publish, is because I feel like I have nothing to add sometimes that isn't just going to feed a kind of chaotic, and the story touches on this as well, is that from one age to the next, we just simply disagree with one another, and then disagree with one another, and disagree with one another, and that's what we call the expert of the moment, whoever has disagreed with someone who's come before them. And like, I want to be part of something that's a little bit more than that, and I sometimes don't always know how.
I don't have a good answer for
That's
that.
difficult.
Yeah.
That's really difficult.
Mhm. It's part of why I love teaching, is help people hopefully to move past some of that. But publishing, I sometimes feel like I'm just feeding into the chaos of disagreeing with someone who's disagreed with someone else and getting it 10th hand.
That seems to be... Yeah, that's popular these days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is it's not a complete tangent, but it's tangential to what you said. But what you just described is a reason why appealing to an authority is fallacious, because
Mhm.
authorities disagree with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Experts disagree with each other. So if you appeal to an expert and an expert disagrees with each other, then your argument is nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
So just throwing that little fun tidbit out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and getting my students to understand the difference between facts and statistics, or facts and expert opinion, is sometimes a bit of a challenge. And getting them to understand that experts with accurate interpretations of data can still come to wildly different conclusions and disagree with one another is a huge paradigm shift for a lot of them.
Well, that's because they're taught in school to trust the experts, whatever the
Mhm.
that means.
Yep. Not a thing.
Yeah, no, it's idiotic.
But they're young, so teaching them that there's very little they can actually trust in is... I'm trying not to be that.
Well, you got to trust in somebody. If you can make, you just have to. There's no way. You can't know all things. You're going to have to trust somebody. So the important thing, in my opinion, is to teach people how to trust somebody, which is another
Mhm.
way of how to think, which is
Mhm.
called logic. And they don't teach that because you can quickly discern with logic that the current worldview and prevailing opinions are nonsense if you look at them logically.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's getting late. So maybe we can wrap this up with this discussion. One of the things that you guys have touched on a good amount is the issues with religion and so-called atheism and scientism and humanism, for lack of a better term. And it seems that where a lot of people want to talk about the pursuit of what they would consider to be higher things, quote, science, unquote, and such topics, occurs, right? They move away from religion, but in moving away, they find a new exceptionally dogmatic religion of their own. And in so doing, kind of negate their whole pursuit to begin with. So the vacuum, right? That leaving the idea of spirituality and faith, right, leads to just finding something else to replace that. So why do you think that is, for one?
Yeah, I got a quick response to that. First of all, you called it a vacuum, and finding something else to replace it. Those are your exact words. I would argue that you're not finding anything; it's given to you. This crap is thrown down your throats. All right. And second of all, that's just for us. That's just for the peons, the normal layman. Okay. The top dogs of this vacuum that you call science, I would argue that they are very religious. Even Mr. Forrester, I mentioned this to Amber before we were talking. What was the club he was in? That was not in
Bloomsbury group.
Right.
Mhm.
That was not in college. That was afterwards.
The what?
Bloomsbury group.
The Bloomsbury.
Or the Bloomsbury set.
Right. In college, he was in this club. He went to Cambridge, and I will just leave this up to people's interpretation. But what I'm fixing to say is facts. He was in this club called the Apostles, and the Apostles is this, for lack of a better word, secret society. No one knows, in Cambridge University that have 12 members at a time.
Pretty
When you
exclusive.
when you retire, when you leave it, you become an angel. To get into the Apostles Club, you're called an embryo, and they have embryo meetings. So it's just freaking weird. How is that that sounds pretty religious to me, but just look into that.
I did not know about that part.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that have to do with the discussion?
Well, to summarize it, you were saying that they're leaving religious behind. I'm saying that the top people in what you might call the religion for the irreligious are indeed religious. Yeah, the head of the creator of the Big Bang was a Jesuit priest.
Really?
Yep. So they want you to think it's not religious, but all the top people are religious. That's my point.
Ever?
Kind of taking a different approach, but I think ultimately when you seek to negate God, to remove God from your paradigm, most people ultimately still need someone to be the arbiter of good and evil, right and wrong. Very few people, I think, can exist without someone saying, this is right, this is wrong, this is bad, this is good. And when you depose God from that position of being the judge, who's left?
You?
Mm-hmm.
People? I don't know.
Yes. So inevitably, when you try to say
Kanye?
there is no God, there is no spiritual entity to say this is right and this is wrong, you ultimately have to have someone who is the final arbiter of good and evil. And what you're left with is mankind himself. And for many people, it's not just mankind himself, it's mankind themselves. I know what's right and wrong. It's oftentimes determined based off of what gives them pleasure or not. And therefore, they take the role of God in determining this is good, this is evil, and they become their own religion. The worship of the self is part of what we see in social media.
But
Perhaps so. I would take some issue with a portion of that discussion and suggest that most people, not everybody, but a good chunk of people, God doesn't end up necessarily being themselves, but especially as you with the discussion when social media enters the discussion, it's people in positions of perceived authority or people in positions of perceived influence or power. It ends up being those and well, I don't know. To look at it more from your standpoint, perhaps those are the people whose ideas and opinions agree most with what is convenient to the person consuming them. I don't know. You sounded like you're about to say something. Sorry.
yeah, I think if you you strip away God. Like, let's equate God to order. Okay. Can we agree with that?
Big assumption, but okay.
Why is that a big assumption?
It just is.
I'm saying God is the source of order. Do you disagree with that?
We can take it as an assumption. Let's move on.
Well, I literally don't know how you can disagree with that, but if you're going to, and not, you can't offer an argument against that. So you're just saying it's an assumption.
I would say it's not an assumption because it's literally the first verse in the Bible. If you take it as in the beginning there was chaos and then God turned it into order.
Dadgummit, John, you just took my thunder.
So
All right, John just once again stole my thunder, as he did with the frickin' Marines in Kandahar. Everyone watched that episode.
He did.
Dadgummit. I had a sweet punchline and everything. All right, so
Good job, John.
God is order. Carson is trying to disagree with that, but can't articulate it because it's impossible. All right, so if
Carson's
God is
just being
order
Carson.
and you strip away God, you're left with chaos. It's John frickin' and what's another name for chaos? All right, he's the serpent of the sea. He's called the Leviathan. Chaos is Satan. All right. Strip away God, you get Satan. Men don't have power. I'm sorry. Like, I can't stop the sun. I can't stop the Dow from going 3,500 points negative or however, whatever the heck it's doing.
That happened last week, right?
If you're talking in a macro sense, we don't have power over nothing. Would people disagree with that? So somebody like the
well, I disagree and say we don't have power over anything.
yeah, whatever. Yeah. Y'all are English people. Excuse me. I'm from Murray County, Tennessee, and I wasted my time in college on an accounting degree. But anyway, I agree with Amber, but I would say that thing is an illusion. Where the illusion is that we're the God, but that's a lie, and the father of lies is masquerading to take the place of God and destroy his progeny, however you say that word.
Progeny? Is that the word you're going for?
Whatever.
Words are hard.
It's an
Words are
illusion.
hard.
It's either we choose the creator or his enemy. Our power on the macro scale is an illusion. You just have to choose who you're going to believe in. And the greatest trick of the devil is convincing you he don't exist. Convincing you that you're your own God, that you're the source of your own morality, that you're the source of your own power and judgment. But that's just not true. And I'm open to being wrong, but I cannot understand how that's not true, because I look at the world and I can do nothing about it. I can do things, in my own life, but ultimately, can I? Like, I can choose a set of belief systems and to search for their origins. And to me, it's just choosing good or evil. That's what it gets down to.
Okay. No, that was well said. I have nothing to add to that. Nothing to argue with.
All right. Well,
Amber?
should we end the podcast then? Going for a while.
What a timid way to suggest that. That was uncomfortably timid. You have anything to share about anything? The machine stops. Gays.
Hey, Amber, I did want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
To end it up. Why does the machine stop? I couldn't, does it just...
It
Did they ever say
eventually
why?
breaks down.
Yeah, but
right?
why?
The systems that support it, that organize it, it's kind of like AI, that hypothetically grows beyond human beings and no longer needs them. It functions without them. But on the flip side, eventually something's going to go wrong with the software, right? So kind of like basically in AI, it becomes self-sustaining. It no longer needs humans to organize it, to run it, etc. But at a certain point, it becomes so independent that it actually starts to kind of kick out the humans that were maintaining it, right? They lose knowledge, they lose purpose, they become encapsulated in their little hive cells, and they stop creating, they stop building, they stop renewing, and that affects the machine itself as well. And so eventually it can't maintain itself because it's a created item, not an actual creator, even though they worshipped it as one. And the created item eventually, without the creator to maintain it, ceases to function.
So entropy then, right?
Yeah. And so it eventually breaks down and fails, kills almost, if not in actually everyone inside it. But there's a secret society still living upon the earth that will renew the world, and mankind theoretically at least will flourish again. And it ends on that bittersweet note of, I believe it's Vashti is concerned that man will repeat its mistakes and build the machine all over again in the future, but Kuno is optimistic, suggesting that mankind has learned its lesson and will do better, build better. And I think it kind of leaves us with this message of, are you going to be an optimist or are you going to be a pessimist? Which path do you choose? And it's kind of like a which wolf do you feed dilemma.
So you're saying there's a
I'm
chance.
saying there's a chance, y'all.
Nice. Anything else, guys? I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah, if you have any complaints, just complain to the complaints who complain to the complainers. That's
Mhm.
kind of was in there. It was just
Yeah.
a joke. That's kind of how it is. What are you going to do if you complain against
That's
the
what
government?
real life's like, dude. Yeah.
And your
Try to
complaint will
anything
get
done.
forwarded to the correct
That's
department
right.
in its turn.
Yeah.
You can complain to the government, and they will respond to you in 47 months with a piece of paper and charge you $500.
Only 500?
Yeah.
That seems small, yeah.
Well, the machine is the United States, boys.
All right. Well, this has been fun. Bye. Love you guys.